Okay, there we go. All right, thank you, Katie. Would everyone close their eyes for a second? Once upon a time, there were two sons. One son asked their father for their inheritance early, before he had passed. The son took this inheritance and everything he had and left for a distant country. He went on to make his own name for himself. He partied, he had fun. Then he ended up squandering all of the inheritance. And then in this bad luck, in this bad luck, a famine hit the land. They went into an economic depression. And he needed work. And he couldn't find any place to work except for this hog farm. And so he's working at the bottom of the rung of this hog farm. He's the one feeding the pigs. And he's not making enough to eat. And he's looking around. He's sitting in this pigsty. He can't even eat the feed that he's feeding the pigs. And he thinks to himself, even my father's hired hands are eating better than I am. So he makes the decision to go back home. And he prepares this speech to tell his father, I'm sorry, I've sinned against you. Please make me a servant. And so he goes home, and the father sees them while he's still a long way off, and the father runs to embrace him. And the son starts to say, I'm sorry, and then the father stops him and says, I'm so happy you're home. Let's kill the fattened calf. Let's have a party. Let's celebrate. For my son has been lost, and now he is found. And then the older brother, who stayed home the entire time, doing all the right things, said, how come you've never thrown me a party? And the father looks at him and says, son, everything I ever had has always been yours. You can open your eyes. This is one of the most retold, treasured parables in the Western canon. It's a very important one to me in my spiritual life. And there's so much in this. I'm able to talk about it over a 3-part sermon series. So the one we're going to get into today is we're going to look at this story from the perspective of the son. And then the next time it'll be from the perspective of the brother. That will be on the topic of resentment. The son is the topic of shame today, is what we'll be talking about. And then the father, from his perspective, it will be from the perspective or on the topic of grace. And you can think of each of these 3 perspectives as a different point of the spiritual journey that we oscillate through all the time. It's not a consecutive place that we go to. But the thing I really like about this parable for me is I think the reason why we have puzzled over it for 2,000 years is because it tells us what God is actually like. It tells us what love is actually like. And it's very, very hard for us to embody it. It's very hard for us to understand it. And then the other thing about it that I think a lot of people miss is that if you notice, it's telling a story of salvation, of how to get saved. It's telling a story of salvation that is circular instead of linear. In this story, getting saved does not mean becoming something that you're not. It is not a linear journey of you finding this God that's out there. It is this journey of you leaving God, you believing that you are separated from God, and then coming back to that knowing. I think it's interesting when we talk about asking Jesus to come into our heart as if he had left in the first place. And the thing that makes us separate ourselves from God is shame. It is the belief that we are not worthy, just like the son. And this shame-based religion tells us that we are worthless, and that the way that we get saved is to confess, say we're sorry. And if you notice the way the son is saying sorry in this story, the father is saying, I don't care, I'm just glad you're home. That's very different from a shame-based religion. The way shame operates in the son's story is that it makes him leave and it makes him return. It is operating in the entire time. And the thing I think people pass over a bit with this story is they see the son as this spoiled rich kid who just rejects a very happy life with his family. But I firmly believe that everyone does stupid things for very good reasons. So let's think about the possible reasons why this son would want to leave the comfort of his home. One is, has anyone ever lived in the shadow of their older sibling? An older sibling who does everything right. That's really hard. And a lot of times when you're in that situation, you don't even try to be like the older sibling. You just try to be the complete opposite, because you just think that I will never be like them, so I have to carve out my own path. So that is one way that shame could be operating. The other is, I think it's safe to say that this son's coming from a prominent family. They're well off. They have land. If you were born into a prominent family, say it's very respected, say it's very wealthy, that's a very tough shadow to live under. It's tough to feel like you have to live up to that. And children who grow up in those types of homes, it's really hard. The other way I think shame could be operating is that a lot of times we can feel shame about where we're from, even if it's a very loving place or a loving family. I saw this a lot where I was growing up in rural Ohio, where a lot of my peers, in high school, middle school, there was everyone would talk about wanting to get out of this dump. Because if you think about it, you look on TV and the way the city is depicted versus rural areas, it's the rural people are not depicted that well. It's you go to the city, it's very cosmopolitan, it's very accepting, and the people in rural areas are backwards. And so I think a lot of us had a chip on our shoulder about that, and we would always talk about wanting to get out. I see myself so much in the son in this story because of that, where I didn't quite have so much shame about where I came from, but I went to a state school for my undergraduate degree, and then I moved back to my hometown because I wanted to give back after college. So I worked in the local government in my hometown. But I had this nagging feeling where I was what if I could do something great? What if I could go to a really good school, get a really good job? Maybe I could work on Capitol Hill instead of local government. And that was some voice wondering if I had worth beyond what I saw myself doing in this very small town. And similar to King Midas, I got my wish, and sometimes it's not fun when you get your wish. I got into a good school. I got into the London School of Economics. My parents didn't really know what it was. They didn't really care. They were just happy I went to college. But I was really happy that I got into it. And so I went to a distant land, England, and I finally made it, but I felt so out of place there sometimes. I mean, to quote Dickens, my time in London was the best of times and worst of times. Mm-hmm. I learned so much getting to travel through Europe, and all my classmates were international, so I was barely around any other Americans. But I really wasn't around anyone who had come from a place like rural Ohio. Mm-hmm. A lot of my peers there came from economically very advantaged backgrounds, and I just felt lonely and homesick sometimes, honestly. found myself casually listening to bluegrass music for the first time in a while. And I was surprised because I am prone to wander, as the song says, but I realized that I started to feel a bit like Icarus, where I thought maybe I had flown too close to the sun. Maybe my ambitions brought me in a really tough place to be. I made the mistake of going to seminary before studying economics, and I was just so disheartened listening to the way my economics professors would talk about humans, putting a monetary value on their life or describing humans as utility maximizing individuals, and also not even thinking about the values behind public policy, where no one was asking, what is the economy for in the first place? And I'm complaining about this, and my classmates have no idea what I'm talking about. Because of course, no one goes to policy school after seminary. So I felt really alone at times, and I started self-isolating. And the way I coped is the way a lot of people cope in England, which is like you drink your worries away at the pub. And so when I read the Prodigal Son story, I do see this son who wanted to get away, and things didn't go as he planned. And things got really hard, and he fell into addiction. How else do you squander everything? How else do you end up in a pigsty? I've been reading this book by Gabor Mate, who is an addiction doctor. He's been a big proponent of harm reduction and introducing a more compassionate approach to people in addiction. And Gabor says to never ask what's wrong with the addiction, ask what is right with the addiction. Because people go to substances for very good reasons. And the thing is that we are all addicted to something. We are all somewhere on the continuum. Like, this is a feature of human existence. And the reason why we go to these things is because we don't like being ourselves. Like, our state, our conscious, unaltered state becomes excruciating. And whether it's shopping, whether it's working, whether it's cocaine, whether it's heroin, marijuana, sex, whatever it is, we go to these things because it's so uncomfortable to just be in that unaltered state that we're looking for something to take us out of that. And shame is what keeps you in the pigsty. Because once we develop these sorts of addictions, we develop shame around them, and then we push people away. The reason why a lot of people, the way a lot of overdoses happen where people die, is because the person has relapsed and they're afraid of people judging them. And so they will use by themselves, and then no one is around to resuscitate them when they pass out. This is very sad. Shame can literally kill you. Fortunately for the son, he comes to his senses and he leaves the pigsty. And so when he comes back, it's so beautiful when the father runs to him. Also in that culture, a father would not run to, it would be unseemly for a father to run to his son like this. And I would take the logic of this story to an even more of an extreme, where I think this is the kind of father that if he knew where his son was, he would get down there in the pigsty. Because what this story is telling us, this story is saying that this is a God who will get down with you on the bathroom floor and say, I'm not trying to change you, I just missed being with you. I just want to be with you because I love you. You don't have to do anything differently. I'm just going to get down on the bathroom floor with you. The thing is, we subconsciously cut ourselves off from love, from God. A lot of times we're not doing this on purpose. Imagine you're sitting with your deepest shame. You're on the bathroom floor, you're in the pigsty. Have you ever invited love? Have you ever invited God into that space? Many of us, unfortunately, have never experienced this kind of love because humans will love imperfectly. The prodigal father in this story, we don't have parents like that. Our parents try to love us the best we can, but we're all flawed at the end of the day, which I think makes all the more reason why it's important to open yourself up to the love of God, to say, God, these are the things I hate most about myself. I'm going to let you love them. This is something that we have to experience and not just intellectually know. I think this is something that's really hard to just do overnight. I want to end with, Katie, if you could throw up the piece of art now. I want to end with like a little bit of urgency with this and kind of a cautionary tale. Does anyone recognize this artist? This is Thomas Hart Benton. He's an American artist, early 20th century. He grew up in the Midwest in Missouri, and he left his. This is his depiction of the prodigal son returned home. So Thomas Hart Benton, he grew up in a family of politicians in Missouri, and he rejected that, left to go to New York, lived as an artist, and eventually came back. And his home the region had been really wrecked by the Dust Bowl, economically depressed. And so he has this like haunting like image of the prodigal son coming back, and the house that he grew up in is decayed. You can see the fattened calf, just a skeleton in the corner of the image. And you wonder if Benton was dealing with some guilt of asking himself, like, should I have gone home? Like, is there something about the love I had back at home that I could have had? Why did I reject it? Like, I knew that I had to go and figure out who I was and become this great artist. But there was also these family members back home who didn't really care if I was an artist or not. They just loved me for me. The way I take this is that Thomas Hart Benton is saying, don't wait. God's love is eternal and will always be there for you. But the people around us, they want to love you. They want the opportunity to love you. Do not wait to become perfect. So many of us, we say, as soon as I get my act together, I'm gonna pull myself into church. I'm gonna start a meditation practice. I'm gonna go back home. I'm gonna reconnect with my Father, whatever it is. Do not wait. We will never be perfect. Let's go to discussion.
Would you like me to stop sharing now?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. And those in the room, just let me know if you'd like to talk and I can pass you this mic. Any questions or any parts of this story that you saw yourself in?
So when I was a junior in high school, I was on a retreat, and I was a Roman Catholic at the time. It was a mandatory retreat that all of us had to participate in. And the first night of the retreat, the priest got up and he read the story of the prodigal son. And in a lot of the same way that you just spoke about it, it hit me like a thunderbolt. Oh my God, I've missed the fact that God loves me unconditionally. Amen. That my adolescent sins of sexuality and stuff like that were not important. I mean, the priest actually started giving a sermon about, young men masturbating and all this other stuff, and that does not remove you from the love of God. Amen. And I had never heard that before. And at the end of that school year, I decided I was worthy enough to become a Severian brother and enter the seminary, which is what I did. It was all because of that parable and what the priest had said.
Wow.
And you are so right, Kelly, about shame being the poison that separates us from God. It makes us feel unworthy, inadequate, inferior, never good enough. And very few of us have ever experienced unconditional love. And it's transformative when we do. So I feel honored to be here. I was touched to tears by both your singing and your sermon. So thank you, my dear friend.
Thank you, Chad.
Kelly, I was moved by your singing and your sermon today. I speak lowly because I'm still kind of emotional, but I've been a part of unconditional love, but even though I left my small town, I was loved by my mother unconditionally, being straight, being gay, whatever. But I felt my town didn't love me. So I left. But then when I went back, I felt my town had loved me because it was 2020, it was a new era, new thing. And so I finally felt loved by my town. Never not loved by my family, but by my town. And your song today took me to my childhood church. Man, that took me to my childhood church. I remember as a child we sung that song so often.
Right.
Yeah, and with the guitar and with the organ and everything. And so
Wow.
you took me to church today.
Wow. Thank you, Chad.
Kelly, I also loved your song and your sermon. I just want to highlight what Matthias put in the chat. He said, I've always wondered what happens after the celebration. After showing his unconditional love, does the father then give his son honest, tough love to prevent him from making the same mistakes? Or is the unconditional love alone what saves the son?
Hmm. Open to interpretation. I have my opinion on what that would be, but I mean, I don't think the father would try to teach him a lesson afterwards. I think he's back in the family.
The pigsty taught him the lesson.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what the lesson was.
but
That
his
was the lesson.
inheritance is still gone.
Yeah.
He does have to still live with the consequences.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing the father can do about that.
Yeah, Nikki in the room was saying that the son still has to live with the consequences of the squandered inheritance, which the father can't do anything about that.
I'm just wondering whether the father, on some level, feels some pride in his son for going out in the world, and even if he's fallen on his face, even if he's, in case of squandered the money or no longer has the money, at least he did something daring and bold and went and learned the kinds of lessons that one can only learn by going out into the world. I don't know. That's one thing I wonder if that is a spiritual lesson in this story.
Yeah.
I think it is.
I appreciate that, Jason. I've thought about this a lot too because, I mean, like when I think about my story, I had to go out into the world. Like that was a very important part of my spiritual journey. But I mean, which we'll learn next time too with the son who stays behind. Like there's also beauty in staying, which I mean that's something that I'm just now learning in this part of my life, like the beauty of just not leaving. So I think there's two different ways you could go there that are equally valid, I think. I like how the angels spotlighted.
Their faces.
Yeah, which one is that?
Just to Jason's point, there's another parable where there's 3 servants who are given investments to make, gold, and one invests it, one does a little bit of investing, but one hides it. And the parable says that the one who's given the most will be given more, and the one who's given the least, it will all be taken away. And so it's kind of a counterintuitive thing, because the one who hid the money was being conservative and protecting the money. And the sort of the story is actually you have to take risks. You have to go out and try and do something. And the worst thing you can do is sit on it. So that might reinforce what your point was, Jason.
Does anyone resonate with one character over the other? Son, father, calf. Yeah, I did a bit of research too on like what it means for you to ask for your inheritance early. And in all of these cultures, like even now, if you did that, it would be tantamount to saying that you wish your father was dead. And like your father would just beat you if you asked for that ahead of time. So it was a big FU. And I think that kind of plays into why like the son felt like he couldn't go back because he had done such like a horrible thing. It's also interesting in the story, the first 2 verses, the inheritance has already been given away. It just happens so quickly. The son's like, "Can I have my inheritance?" The father's like, "Okay." So we don't really know like how that all went down. Like we don't know if the father like debated it or just thought that this would be a good lesson for the son to figure out. We don't know. But I think the point is there's a lot of behaviors that the father is showing that a father would never show in this culture. And Jesus is also telling this parable in front of these Pharisees. This is part of like a 3-parter for him. It's the parable of the lost coin, the parable of the lost sheep, I think, and then this is the parable of the lost son. And it's all of this is kind of building on this idea that God will find you wherever you are. Yeah.
We perhaps don't pay enough attention to the pigs. This was a story told by a Jewish rabbi about the son hitting rock bottom. Rock bottom was working with pigs, which Jewish people could not eat.
Yeah.
They were considered, an unclean animal. So the fact that he had to work with pigs and feed the pigs was really hitting rock bottom.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's what it takes for us to wake up and smell the coffee and say, I really screwed up.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about those other parables with the coin and the sheep, and in those ones, the person goes out to find them. But in this one, the father stays home and lets his son go out and hit rock bottom, which no parent wants their kid to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to sit and watch your child suffer. And he doesn't go look for him. He doesn't find him. He waits, and then when he sees him coming back, then he runs to him.
Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, I love this sermon, this story. I think somebody who also grew up Roman Catholic was always maybe this is just a universal Christian thing, but it seems like such a prominent story that's always used to elucidate, I guess, really, the message of God's love. And I love that um your insight as to being on the bathroom floor and being that feeling of being like struggling with something and alone and realizing that you know and I guess especially in I guess Catholic sort of theology of this father analogy, that I love what you said about that, like Christ never did he ever really, like, we have to invite him into our heart like he ever left. But this parable and the way that our relationship with whatever you want to call it, God, divinity, a higher power, or in this case, God the Father, something above and supreme, that, you know, like, can we invite that into our own hearts of, like, when we're feeling alone, right? And like at our lowest, that it's like, as much as we think we're not worthy of our Father's love, that He'll still be there to welcome us, and cultivating that feeling inside, because, we so much of what you elucidated, like, these addictions that we use to, like, try to cope with that feeling of loneliness, that absence of love, that it might be able to just be receptive to it and realize that even though we might not feel worthy of it, that it's going to be there. It's reliable. And even when we're dealing with, as another here said, so the consequences, like, the consequences aren't going away, but we can still, I don't know, yeah, receive that, and not have to feel like we're unworthy of it, that it's just there, the not and the overcoming of the shame. So yeah, I appreciate the message. It's a powerful one. I think it's probably one of our most powerful roadblocks that we have in our lives. Maybe sometimes we put there ourselves because we just think, like, there's no way he'll take me back home. So thanks. Yeah.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, I think it does make a lot of sense that we would think that, I mean, that this kind of God would not take us back, because so much of, like, the dominant religion in America, it is this idea that you have to say sorry first. You have to get saved before you get redeemed and everything. And so I think for a lot of us, it just feels like second nature that we wouldn't have this automatic love. Because the dominant theology is you don't get an automatic love until you say sorry. Joy, did you have your hand up?
I did. Thank you, Kelly. This parable always makes me think of one of Meister Eckhart's quotes that's very popular. God is always at home. It's we who've gone out for a walk.
Mm.
And when I think about that, or counsel people using that, I always think, and the beautiful thing is, once you turn around, home is right there.
Amen. Amen.
You don't have to walk as far back.
Amen.
Thank you, Joy. I've been talking about this a lot to some friends, about this concept of home being, like, a very core part of, like, who God is, because I think it gets lost a lot, because it does mean, I don't think we talk about, like, homecoming a lot. As I mentioned it earlier, like, homecoming, like, that is a part of salvation. That's a part of getting saved. It's like coming home to yourself. And there's also some warmth and intimacy with it that I think is not how we typically talk about God. I think also the dominant way of talking about God is this God that's out there. It's very scalar. It's very big. It's not something small inside of us. In Quakers, we call it the still small voice. I think it's that kind of voice that the son hears in the pigsty, where it's like, oh, he quietly came to his senses. That was the beginning of him coming home. So thank you, Joy, for sharing that Meister Eckhart quote. I think maybe we have time for one more question or comment. Is there anyone else who has a burning desire? Kevin, you said, I also forgot to look forward to hearing the next part about resentment, because I'm realizing as we speak how difficult it is to live that. Yeah. How to forgive others without having to say sorry. Yeah. I think I'm really looking forward to the resentment one too, because I think I'm looking at a lot of this story through the lens of harm reduction, where what does it look like as a society for us to give people housing even when they're not off drugs, and then we'll feel resentful of that, where we say, I've been working so hard, I haven't been doing any drugs, and my taxpayer dollars are getting spent on housing people who are still using. There's the resentment. Yeah. Tune in next time.
Except that housing and medical care are human rights. They
Yes.
don't have to be earned. They shouldn't have to be
They shouldn't have to be earned.
Yeah, I do think this is a very American quality that, sorry, which links, I guess, there's a sense that you have to deserve what comes. And I think, that's very much, of course, what resonates from the prodigal son story, is that he didn't necessarily deserve, and yet that's the unconditional kind of quality that brings someone home. Yeah, and I think that is with home being that safe, a place where someone can feel safe, which I think most of us are looking for.
Thanks, John. I like that too, because it's really hard for us to start trying to heal and fix ourselves until we feel safe. And I think that's the problem of waiting until we're better to invite people in. We need to invite people in to get better. Okay, thanks everybody for such a great discussion. This has been a really great service with you all, so thank you.